Welcome to the Markets Happy Hour podcast, a weekly markets update for investors the world over. Each week we discuss inflation, geopolitics, interest rates, equity markets, and other asset classes. To try to answer the question, what does this mean for my investment portfolio? Let's dive in.
And we're going to speak initially about whether June was indeed inflation's deep fake moment. We know inflation looked particularly low in June, and that gave some confidence to market participants that the central bank's next move would not be upwards. But we're going to dig into some of the energy pricing data and ask whether that was simply too good to be true, and we need to, in fact, still be worried about inflation as we look to the second half of the year. There is a new face at number 10, but there are so many old faces, but at least when it comes to some of the news flow, as we're seeing, again, a focus on AI and some of its issues as it goes rogue, perhaps. But we're also hearing a lot more about tariffs. And of course, the geopolitical situation has not progressed. When it comes to equity markets, we are going to look at how momentum has in fact lost momentum. And then we're going to move on to portfolio implications. So back to the question as to whether inflation in June was a deep fake. What we can see is that UK inflation in June had fallen more than expected to 2.6%. And this comes at a time when there is a sharp focus by the new Prime Minister on reducing the cost of living. We've heard already about a scrapping of taxes on some energy and also home energy bills. We've also seen a cut in the bus fare outside London to £2. So small changes at the margin, but definitely true to the manifesto of keeping things affordable. When it comes to the Eurozone, we are seeing inflation slightly higher there at 2.8%. And the question there is, will that be enough for the ECB to be able to pause? All eyes are remaining on oil. And even since these slides were produced, where I have a headline showing oil rising past $95 a barrel, we now know that oil has surpassed $100 a barrel. There is ongoing saber rattling and threatening of more escalation in the Iranian zone. We've also seen the Strait of Hormuz with virtually no traffic, another true choke point there, and suggestions even that there are skirmishes elsewhere on some of the other major supply chains and further pressure there, therefore potentially on supply. This comes at a time, as we noted last week, that oil inventories are close to record lows. And there's also been some suggestion that natural gas too will come under some severe pricing pressure next year. So a very bleak picture for energy pricing at this stage. And as we can see, crude prices for December and for a year out are rising again. Moving to the UK, we're hearing again about Andy Burnham's first week in the office, or actually the first few days in office, and we've already seen some surprises when it comes to the cabinet positions. While Shabana Mahmood and Ed Miliband had been touted as potential candidates for the Chancellor position, the all-important Chancellor of the Exchequer, it was actually an outside candidate, John Healey, that was appointed, which clearly nobody saw coming, in particular not the prediction markets. This would actually lead me to question as to how much information we can ever get from the prediction markets. It's interesting that they are increasingly cited in mainstream media now as an indication of expectations. And as we can see from something like this, there was no inside information. There was no moving of markets. The markets got it wrong. And in a sense, there was just as much ignorance there as elsewhere. So as far as what markets think of the new Prime Minister, suggesting that the new Chancellor actually shores up confidence because he is perhaps a less radical figure, and radical is not generally desirable in that role, particularly given the volatility we've seen around fiscal confidence in the UK recently. We have seen UK bonds selling off somewhat as the new Prime Minister had taken office. I would suggest that is definitely to be expected in terms of the uncertainty. We've been there before. It's just below the 6% level. We can see that there is clearly not exactly a sense of calm and complacency in markets, but equally there has not been sheer outright panic either.